Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Emily Haller and I'm here with Paul Thomalla of ACI Worldwide, and we're discussing the likely developments in payments this year. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
The changing competitive landscape in payments is really going to bite, driven by regulation. How do you think we'll see banks responding to this?
I think the key thing that the banks will do is they'll start to work out who, in fact, is their real customer. And it may sound obvious that the real customer is me or you, or it's a corporate. But in fact, from a bank's point of view, the real issue is that they have a lot of internal customers. And that type of change is going to be driven out. That also brings in a scenario where one of the customers might be an external intermediary as well, when that's relatively unusual for a bank. So trying to work on the cultural side of things, who's my customer, what am I trying to do for them, and what is it they really want, is a big change. Because in the past, of course, most of the banks had an analog view of where their customer was and what they needed to do and all the services and the way it interacted. Now that's going to be changed, and there will be a lot more view and concept about what it is the end users really want, and if I'm going to work with an intermediary, how am I going to work with them? That's a very different cultural change that the way banks are going to have to work, and I think that'll be their main cultural focus this year.
How could further development of the Internet of Things, an ever more connected world, impact the payments business this year?
Well, I think the Internet of Things is a huge topic, and it's really hard for us to get our brains around the scope of the effect that will happen, whether it's smart cities, whether it's homes, or more likely, I think, probably the easiest way to start to think about it is in terms of cars and sort of a simple step that will make. And I think the journey that we go on is the journey of a contextual world. So we've already seen what Uber has done for cars and taxis. But if we take that another level, it's when I'm in my car, as an example, then do I want to pay for petrol? Do I want to get my car serviced? Am I going to pay for movies in the back for the kids? Am I going to get music? All of those things, then the car becomes a context. And I don't necessarily want to think about all the bits and bobs that are in the car, but it is the context that when I'm in it, I want these things to happen nicely and seamlessly. That's another way of thinking about the Internet of Things. And I think that's the way that we'll start to see it, use case based. And what we've seen with Uber is people don't want to get involved with the actual payment itself, but they want the service. And so what cars bring us is the proxy for the service and all the things that we need to get done, and the payments happen around it somewhere. A little like magic, but we in the industry know that it's not. That's a better way to think about it than the huge scope of Internet of Things, I think.
And increased fraud and cyber threats have been a big feature of the market and are likely to be even more of one this year. How should banks be reacting?
Well, it's the number one thing. I mean, there is no bigger thing that we have to address and get fixed. And at one level, of course, it's a super large number of all the amount of fraud that goes on. Put that to one side. It's more about the individuals and the personalities that get burnt and the consequences. And as a consequence, what do they do so that they don't get burnt again? And does that take them further and further away from core banking services, which ironically is probably the safest way to go? But if we as an industry don't start to affect that, they will move in a different direction. And that is the issue, because then we start to get into a fragmented world. And once you get into that world, it won't come back again. So the key for us is to go back and make sure that all these transactions are safe, go to all the right places, and people really come back and feel the huge confidence they've had for years that this is the right way to do things. So as an industry, it's the number one thing that we need to get fixed.
And looking even further forward, what other topics should be in people's minds?
I think two things. One is that we will start to, as an industry, talk about platforms and how platforms work. And platforms are very different than the way that we do business right now. There are two sides of a platform. There's the one side that's the sell side, the ones that we use, and the one side is the doing side. And the platform economics is very different to that we have right now, where we build a business case and some kind of Keynesian model and we go. Platforms are very different, and it will change the way that the banks and the intermediaries think about how they go to market. So I think you'll start to hear a lot about that. Second one is AI. Now you say, well, okay, well, you know, AI is a big subject. We've seen the CES reports. We've seen these robots. Yeah, but I think what we'll also see is, how do I talk to people? Will I get a robot that understands me and says, yeah, I want to pay the gas bill? Well, that's probably not that hard. But the next level of it is, how do I interact? Do I have a proxy through AI to interact with all my banking services? And is that a real intermediary rather than a different type of firm? So there are many levels of AI that we're going to see, but I would suspect that's going to be a real hot and probably hyped subject this year. But underneath it all, I think it has huge benefit for us, and therefore I think it will drive the industry.
Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.